Thank you, and thank you to members of the panel for your contribution here today and in working with our staff. I have a question first for Mr. Travers. You've indicated that there's some ambiguity with respect to the job that you're trying to perform at TTIC and the analytic efforts of others within the government. And you mentioned that some of the legacy organizations may not be on board. I would like you to elaborate on that, if you would be kind enough to do so.
I did not mean to imply that there were legacy organizations that weren't on board. I just my point was that you can go back to the National Security Act, and we've got a whole bunch of departments and organizations and agencies that have been around a very long while. They have got missions for which they need intelligence. We have TTIC that is now extant as an interagency joint venture that will try to bring together terrorist threat warning material. What responsibilities should devolve from some of these other organizations to TTIC? What should stay put? I don't believe that there is a clear-cut answer to that question. There is no doubt that CTC needs operational support. There is no doubt that the DoD organization needs force protection support from its terrorist analytic organization. So there are no bright red lines, I think, that allow one to decide this should go there or this should stay here. That was my only point. Well,
I guess the issue we're struggling with is what has been frequently called stovepiping or turf or owning information. And there is a natural tendency, at least among men, maybe not so much among women. I'll probably get in trouble for saying this. I'm glad to see that some of that two of the representatives leading agencies now are women who, according to others who have studied this subject, suggest that they're more inclined to share information in their interpersonal relationships. But to be very serious about this, part of the problem has been the inability of one agency which develops information to provide that information to another agency which did not develop it, but which may well use it for the common good. And that's exactly the reason why TTIC was created. The question is whether it's functioning as it was intended, whether you're getting the kind of cooperation that you ought to get. Would you agree with me that the only way in which that function can be made viable is by leadership from the very top of the government? Someone has to tell the agencies, look, don't just pay mouth service to this, you got to do it.
And I believe that's what's happening, sir. I mean, we've had the information sharing memorandum of understanding, for example, puts a positive duty on organizations to share with TTIC information. Again, getting back to the notion of legacy systems, we've got architectures out there that my personal desk has 5 CPUs under it. I have a whole host of organizations piping information to me. We have some security policy questions that preclude us from being able to do federated search across all those CPUs, and so we're having to work through those details. But I won't sit here and suggest that the heart's not willing. We have had FBI over the last 6 months is bringing FBI Net into our system. As I suggested, they are providing for us all the historical data. They're going to provide people on our floor, working for Mike Resnick, my database guy, to make sure that we're including all of the international terrorism individuals that they suspect. So I don't think it's a question, frankly, of a willingness to share information.
All right. What about on the follow-up side? You're receiving information, you're analyzing it. You have no operational capability, but clearly a function of an intelligence analytical operation is the ability to direct the follow-up or the future collection of intelligence information. What is your function and experience with respect to that, and is that running as smoothly or as vigorously as you would like?
Recognizing that we're still a relatively young organization, just since last summer, but Charlie Allen, the Assistant DCI for Collection, has placed an individual into TTIC to do just exactly that. We have a collection manager in TTIC who works on a daily basis with the analysts to ensure that collection requirements are being registered with the appropriate collector, and we will compete quite well, I'm convinced, against all of the other collection requirements that are out there.
So are you saying that it is functioning in a way that you are well satisfied with?
As I said a number of times in my statement, we have a long ways to go. The issue of how we bring together foreign intelligence collection requirements and domestic intelligence collection requirements is new business for this government. And so we have not yet fixed that problem, but we are certainly working it.
But in terms of your ability to communicate your collection needs and the responsiveness of those with whom that collection request is charged, is that functioning well, or is that among the areas in which you are ambivalent in your praise?
On every priority list that this government has, terrorism is at the top. And so, while I couldn't sit here and give you examples of how a TTIC intelligence collection requirement stacked up against a Pacific Command intelligence collection requirement if the collector was the same. I can say with a great deal of confidence that TTIC would do very well.
Ambassador Harty, let me ask you a question that I put earlier to Mary Ryan, and that is whether you have discovered in the course of your service in the consular office that there is an issue with respect to the integrity of translators used in the visa application process in various locations throughout the world, where you do not have native language speakers performing the consular functions.
The short answer is no, I do not. I'm not aware of any systemic problem that way, but there are a couple of things I'd like to add, if I might, sir. First is, when I came into the job, we sent a cable to all ambassadors all around the world and said, please look at the language requirements of every officer at that embassy with specific reference to the consular section, and make sure that we are sending out language qualified officers at the level you believe you ought to have, number one. Number two, in those posts where we do in fact use native speakers as interpreters, there's a number of anti-fraud, anti-malfeasance steps that should and ought to be taken, and I believe in most places where there might be an issue or where we do have native speakers serving as translators, we do, and that is you rotate them. You avoid all patterns of predictable behavior so that any given interpreter today doesn't know which officer they're going to work with tomorrow, which window they're going to sit at after lunch, and so that you are constantly sort of mixing the field so that there isn't any way for anybody to really sort of plan who they're going to interview, how they're going to interview. But I think there's no substitute for training all Foreign Service officers in the languages that they need to do the job. They're living in a country. They are simply better when they speak that language well to the very best of their abilities.
Let me ask you, if there are no systemic problems with regard to the corruption or corruptibility of translators, are there anecdotal instances with which you're familiar?
No, sir. I have to say I'm not. I can certainly find out for you. It seems you may know something I don't know, but I don't have a story.
As I say, we've received anecdotal information about it, suggesting it's systemic. Korea is a country which has been mentioned. There are others that it's specifically mentioned, where for a relatively modest amount of money, a virtual lock on a visa can be purchased. And that's the information we've received, and not from people unacquainted with the system.
I will certainly, sir, look at that. There are very few things we take more seriously than malfeasance. And the Bureau of Diplomatic Security and the Bureau of Consular Affairs, since Assistant Secretary Taylor and I came on board, have a robust partnership in ferreting it out, in exonerating people who ought to be exonerated, and in punishing swiftly those who ought to be punished.
I'm pleased to hear that. Let me just finish by asking you whether it is feasible to train consular officers in foreign languages of their assignment, given the rotation and the fact that they will be moving to other posts.
Yes, sir, I think it is. One of the things that has also changed are some of the rules as to how much language training an officer can get before they go to post. Junior officers have 5 years, during which time the first 5 years of their employment is the time that they are under a tenure process. In pre-9/11 times, it used to be that you could only get a certain amount of language training. I think it was 6 months during that 5 years, because they wanted to make sure that you had an ability to demonstrate how you were going to do on the job. Officer personnel, Foreign Service Institute have changed those rules, have moved those metes and bounds. We need to give people the language they need to do the job. Physical presence isn't enough. You have to be able to do the job.
That's encouraging. Thank you.